why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the topic of the day?
Okay, so I am Dennis. I started working at Odoo about 2.5 years ago, and it's been 1.5 years that I started working on Odoo.sh. I feel that's the biggest impact I've made since I started working here, because it really allows me to help people and make people's life easier.
That's nice. And Odoo.sh was actually released exactly a year ago, so you were working on the team before the release.
Yeah.
So you helped develop the product.
Yes.
Okay. Nice. All right.
So
Today
we'll be talking about Odoo.sh. So first we'll introduce what is Odoo.sh. It's been around for almost a year now, but some people are still new to it. Then we'll go through a functional flow, so what a person who wants to deploy a project on Odoo.sh has to go through. We'll go through the interface of Odoo.sh, what it contains, what's all the features it gives, and how you can use it. Then we'll go through a development flow, so this is more technical, oriented towards developers who want to use Odoo.sh as their tool. And then we'll make a small conclusion and have a small Q&A session.
Perfect. For the Q&A session, for those of you who are seeing this webinar for the first time, you can always ask your questions in the live chat, which is on the side, and we have Dennis who will be answering them. Another Dennis who will be answering them live. If there's some questions, we can also take them at the end. I think that's all.
Yeah, so why did we make the Odoo.sh platform?
Why did we make Odoo.sh? Right.
Previously, the only online hosting platform Odoo had was Odoo Online. It's been around for almost 6 years now, and it's a great platform. But the problem with it is that you can only host standard Odoo and enterprise databases on it. And while Odoo has many customization tools inside the database, 2 years ago we released Odoo Studio, which facilitates these customizations by a lot. So, but there are still, for larger projects who need more development, it's much easier to create these developments, these extra features, and to maintain them by creating them directly through the code. And this is why we created the Odoo.sh platform. To allow people to be hosted by us, to avoid all the hassle of going through the hosting, to set up a server and all that stuff.
So basically, Odoo takes care of all of the infrastructure, and basically people just have to take care of the coding, development.
Exactly. And while we were at it, we decided to implement this solution with integrating the best practices for development. This is why we have a typical flow that we will explain that goes through unit tests to user testing, and it also allows you to have continuous integration for your production database, so to minimize its downtime during updates.
Okay. And in the past year, since Odoo.sh has been released, what would you say are the biggest changes or updates that have been made to the system?
Well, it's more a day-to-day work. We try to improve the platform every day. We add new features almost weekly, even small ones. But sometimes we don't notice them. But recently, the biggest one was the addition of the online editor. It has been released during the Odoo experience.
And what's the advantage of online editor for those of you who don't know?
Well, it allows you to work from any station, anywhere, not necessarily when you're at home on your computer, but or at work on your computer. But you can really, if you have a quick thing to do, you can do it from anywhere. And
so basically, it gives you the flexibility to work from anywhere.
Yes. Indeed.
Okay, that's nice. And I think, but I'm sure that Dennis will also be showing to exactly how the online editor works directly during the demo. So let's go into the heart of the webinar. What are we going to be doing today? Essentially, we're going to take an example, a business case of a partner. Imagining we are a partner, an official Odoo partner, who has received a client, a pet shop, a pet shelter, who would like to implement a very custom module. What we'll be doing with Odoo.sh, here we are on the website of Odoo.sh. Dennis will be showing you exactly how you can do this from A to Z, from registering to deployment, to the final client getting exactly what they want.
Exactly.
Okay.
So just before I start, I would like to have a word about the pricing, who has changed recently. Some people might be wondering about that. So anyway, before I deploy a platform, I need to get an enterprise subscription code. And here you can see what it costs to have access to this platform. Okay, so I can configure the number of workers I need for my database. What does it mean? This is actually the number of workers that I will be serving the requests towards my database. So it means that the more workers I have, the more users I can have in my database, the more visitors I can have on my website, and the more people, the more requests will be able to serve, basically. So let's say to start, I will start with 2 workers. I will start a new project, so I don't need much storage, so I'll start with 1. The shared solution is fine for me, and I will be doing some development, so I will have a few staging environments to work with, let's say 3. So I will click on deploy. This will redirect me to the standard Odoo.com pricing page. Here I can buy a new subscription. I will have to choose number of users my database will use. Let's say I will have 2 users, and I will be using the appointment scheduling application, and I'll have a website. So I choose the dedicated cloud option. I have the same settings that I previously set, and I will buy this subscription. When I click buy now, I will get an email to make the payments, and when I've made the payments, I will get a subscription code that I will be able to use for the deployment of my platform, of my project. So let's go into it. So normally here I am already connected because I have previously already created a project on Odoo.sh, and so I did not get prompts to connect my GitHub account with the Odoo.sh. So for people who, for first timers, they will have to give the correct permissions to Odoo.sh on GitHub so that we can work correctly, so that the platform can do what it needs to do. So you can start from either a new repository that you will create for this project, or you can take one existing one that you already created. So I will create a new one, and for the shelter, for the animal shelter, pet shelter, let's say, I will create this pet shelter repository. I will be using the Odoo v12 version, and here I will add the subscription code that I will have received. I have created one specially for this. Here we go. Normally it's a bunch of numbers, but here it's just like this. And then you can choose your hosting location. Either if you are in Europe, you choose Europe. If you're hosting in America, you choose Americas, or you can choose Asia. We do not have Africa, but if you are in Africa, I would recommend you to take Europe, is the closest one. So then I click deploy. Okay, so this is the standard view that you will get for managing your project on Odoo.sh. As you can see, we have created a new repository on GitHub. We can click this to open the repository. It shows the initial commits that created the repository. I currently only have one branch, the master branch. This is what GitHub creates by default. And I can see that it's deploying an environment where Odoo is running. And this is based on the code that is contained inside my branch. Currently it's empty. You can see it's here. It only has a README file. So now we can see the build is already done. We can connect to it. When we click connect, we will connect to the database as an administrator. And here you see we have an empty database that we can where we can install apps if you want. Okay. So what does this page contain? contains a lot of options. As you can see, we have a bunch of tabs here. For example, the mails. When you send a mail in this database, it will not be sent for real, as this is a development database. So here you can see all different mails. For now, there are no mails that have been sent. You also have a shell access to the container, to the build itself, the instance. Here you can see it's a regular shell. It's more technical, but your developers will really appreciate this. Then you have this new link, the online editor. I will come back to this later. You can access the logs of the database to see everything is running fine. And then you have a bunch of settings. This is new since it's been released a couple of months ago, I believe in July. So to mute a branch means that normally whenever you push a new commit on GitHub in your repository, it will trigger a new build on Odoo.sh. So whenever you click mute branch, this behavior will not be the case anymore because you have muted this branch. So we are not interested in this for now. You can also modify the behavior upon new commits. So when you push it, I said it would create a new build, but you can also choose that it would update the previous builds. So now if I push a new commit, it will, instead of creating a new one, it will keep this one where I may have installed a few things and changed a couple of settings. And I will keep this one and update it with the new code that I pushed. Okay. So this is the version of Odoo it runs on. You can change it for this branch only. You cannot change it for the production branch, of course. But this is mainly when you want to migrate from a previous version to a newer version to make sure that your code is compatible between the two versions. And then this is brand new, the custom domains. Previously, they were only configurable in the settings for the production database. But now you can also have custom domains. So typically, pet shell. You can add, for example, this domain. It's already used. It's works the same way as before in the settings. It's just that you can use this for any build anywhere, and it's mainly because we worked a lot on the multi-website in V12, and so now we can assign custom domains to test the multi-website features in our development process. Okay. If I go to this domain, I will arrive on my database where I can log in admin if I want. There we go. The same one. So important to note that there are a couple of different stages here. As you can see here, this branch, our master branch, is in development. It means that all demonstration database data is installed by default when you install applications. And also by default, we will install your custom modules that you developed inside this branch inside the database. So I will create a branch that I will put in production. Let's call it production branch here. This forks my current branch, the master branch, and creates a new branch. I will directly put it into production. So it's currently queued and it will start building and it will be done soon. It's important to notice that the development builds will only remain alive for a couple of days. We guarantee at least 3 days. It could be longer. And this is because as you keep on developing new features, you will have more and more builds that are generated. And of course, we cannot keep them all alive. We have to garbage collect them to create room for new ones. Okay, so on the production branch, I will have the same options as before, also the shell, the editor, the logs, but I will also have a new tab, which is the backups tab. Here, I can perform a couple of operations. I can view all the previous backups that have been made of my production database. So currently there are none because it's a brand new database. I can see the database has finished. I can connect to it as well. So here, if my clients already had a database hosted on a previous location, I can import its database from elsewhere just by following these simple steps. So you dump the database where it was hosted before, and you upload this dump here. Okay. So you can also always make a manual backup simply with a click of the button. Here it notes the time of the backup, and you can always download and restore it at any time. And so the settings, you have the custom domain name that you can add to your production. By default, it will be hosted at, so my name, the name of my project is iColonTest Pet Shelter, and so I'm hosted at iColonTestPetShelter.odoo.com. Okay. So let's go to the builds page here. Here you have, if people are familiar with it, it's an interface similar to runbots.odoo.com. It basically shows all the builds that have been made for you, all the environments that Odoo.sh has made for you. There is a little rocket here to indicate that it's the production branch here, and this is the production database. You have a couple of options. You have the same connect button as before. I could explain maybe that you can use this connect as shortcut to log in as anyone you want inside the database, which is really useful if you need to test or to see if there are problems with certain users. You can directly log in as them and debug the problem that they have. Okay. You have a couple of extra options here as well. You can have a link straight to the logs, the web shell, the editor. You can download a dump of the database to import it elsewhere, and you can also duplicate it should you need to make a couple of tests rapidly. Then you have the status page. Here you will have the status of all the databases, all the servers that your production database is using. So it takes a while to load because it's getting the real data from the servers. This is the average uptime for the last couple of days. You can see it's pretty good. It's based on our monitoring tools that we use internally. Then you have the settings. Here you have a couple of options, old ones that have been around from the start and a couple of new ones. So you have a project name that you can change at any time. Suppose I just want to name it Pet Shelter instead of iColonTest Pet Shelter. Okay, perfect. The name is not taken, so now my database should be accessible from PetShelter.odoo.com. Perfect. And then I can choose to add a couple of collaborators. If I want to work with other developers on this project, I can add them here. So for example, if I want to add my colleague that's backstage answering your questions right now, I can add him here. And oops, it should be, that's all. This is the first. Normally it should work. I'll try out. I'll find out later why it didn't work. So you can see that there are a couple of different user level rights, access rights levels for your users. There's a good description. So basically the splits between the user rights and admin rights is limited at access to the production data or not. So your clients, if a person has only user rights, he will only be able to have access to the code and make new developments to it. But if he has admin rights, he will also be able to have access to the production data and be able to connect as anyone on the production database. So this setting is to allow public access to the builds page in case you want to expose this page publicly. The people accessing this page from elsewhere will not be able to use the connect as feature, of course. Sorry, let's go back to the settings page. So the module installation is if you want to choose which modules the development branches, so the branches in this stage install. By default, they install only the modules that you developed, but we can also ask for a full installation so that it installs all the modules, but this can usually take about an hour or more. because there are a lot of modules and it runs the tests of each module. Or you can also specify a list of modules that you want to install by tapping here, like as the example gives. So I will keep it at only my modules. So the custom domains was previously configured here, but now it's actually in the branch settings as we saw before. So submodules, I will not talk about it too much because it's rather technical. Basically, its functionality is to suppose you have multiple projects on which you want to use the same code base on each of them. You can add the submodule. You can add a previous repository that you previously used to this repository, so that's the code is contained from that repository is also contained in our current one. This way you can reuse the code without having to rewrite it to add it in this repository as well. And you can also update it by directly updating the submodule instead of copying the code every time you want to update it. Then the production database size, you can see here I have made a production database. It's empty, so it's currently very small. It's only 23 megabytes big. It consists of a PostgreSQL database and a file store. Both are pretty small. We charge per gigabyte of the database size, the production database size, and it's here in euros. It's 80 cents per gigabyte per month. This may sound a bit expensive, but if you see how many times the data, the storage is actually replicated, it makes a lot more sense. So here for a production database of only 23 megabytes, I can see I'm already using about 6 times the amount of space. Then as we saw on the pricing page, on the Odoo.com on the pricing page here, we have configured 2 workers and 3 staging branches. This is indeed what we ask for, and it's automatically set here. If I need, for example, if my database is running a bit slow because I have too many users, I can increase it like this, just change it, and it will increase the number of workers automatically right away on your database. This will, of course, upsell your subscription by the amounts required for a worker. So let's put it back at 2 for now. The same goes for staging branches. So I haven't talked about them much for now because I hadn't had the opportunity to create one yet. But now that I have a production database, I can create a staging branch. Let's call it staging to be original. So what does this do? What do branches in this stage do? It actually copies the production database and then runs it on the code containing in this branch. If there are modules that have been updated, that have changed version since they were installed in the production branch, they will be automatically updated, and you will be able to test the newly developed features from this branch in a separate environment. As you can see, it's rather fast because all it has to do is copy the production database, and the database is currently quite small. So I can also connect to it. Let's connect to it. You see, it's the same empty database. Let's actually install the modules that we paid for inside the production database. So we asked for a website and for the appointment application. This also installs the website. So while this installs, I'll go through the last settings here. So after the staging branch, you can see the revisions. This is a bit more technical again, but this is the revisions of the Odoo source code your server is using. So if you want to see if a recent bug fix has been deployed on your server, you can check out this revision and see if it's behind or in front of the bug fix that you so desire for your database. And finally, you have the subscription code that you used before, and you can see it's correctly activated for now. If I want, I can delete my project, but I do not want to do it at this point. Okay. So this does it for the functional aspects. If there are more questions, feel free to ask them in the chatter.
Okay, so now we move on to the second part of your demo, which is to show more the technical aspect. So what's nice from what I can see about the first part is that Odoo.sh in the 1 year that it's been released, it's a lot more accessible for project managers and for non-developers, I would say.
Yeah, you can do a lot of things without being a developer. You can install third-party apps without having to touch one line of code, and this is really one of the strengths of the Odoo.sh platform. And yeah, at first it was really made for developers, but we try to make it more and more user-friendly so that you don't even have to be a developer to use it. Right. But to use it to its full extent, of course, it's better to have
knowledge about it.
Yeah, or to have developers that have the knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think for the first part, I mean, anyone who is non-technical, who has functional knowledge about Odoo and about Odoo.sh can actually start using it directly. And then if you feel like you need to get into more technical aspects, you can always outsource, either, have your developers do it or outsource it to other developers.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's nice to know. Right, moving on to the technical. This is all up to you.
Yeah. So currently I have my production database. I don't need a team. So I just installed the appointment application. So I have a couple of apps that are installed. But I still have to develop the pet shelter application that my clients asked me to develop. So let's go into the code. The first thing you want to do as a developer is, of course, get the code locally. So for this, there are a couple of shortcuts here that suggest the command that you want to execute. So I will copy this and I will clone it here. So this is an empty, this is an empty repository, an empty folder. I will clone, sorry. I will copy this command to download the repository in my local instance. So now I have a pet shelter folder. And here inside I only have the original commits with the readme file. So let's, I am on the master branch, which is what I want, because I will be developing in development. I will cheat a bit because I will not develop a whole application during this webinar. I have prepared a little file. I will unzip a zip file which contains my module. Okay, I will unzip it here. So now you can see I have created a shelter application. I can show its structure. It's basically like you would imagine any module. It has a demo folder with demo data in it. It has the models, the security files, and it has a couple of views with an icon. And so let's actually make a new branch. Let's call it shelter app. And now we will also remove the readme file because it's not needed. Then I will add everything and commit it. I add the shelter application. Okay, now I have committed it. I still need to push it on GitHub. So I'll push it on the origin under the same branch name. Okay, perfect. In a couple of seconds, I will see a new branch appear here because I created it and I pushed it. So as you can see, automatically it starts a new build. It will take a couple of seconds a couple of minutes to build. So this will install the application, and it will also run all the tests, unit tests that that are linked to the application, to the modules that are installed. Okay, so it will take a couple of seconds more, I think. For the purpose of this presentation, we deactivated the tests because otherwise it would take too long.
But just on an average, how long does it take?
It really depends on the custom modules that you developed, because the more dependencies the modules you develop have, the more modules need to be installed, the longer it takes.
Okay.
But here it shouldn't be too long. I can see in the logs that it's already installed mail.
Okay, so you can actually like watch it, see in real time the progress of the installation.
Here I can see it's done. So normally
okay, so that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right.
So I can connect to it. It's demo database, so I have the 3 demo users. I will connect to this as the admin. For now, I will close the production database. So it installed the shelter application for me by default. So I can verify that the shelter application works as expected. I have a few demo species, a few breeds. So I can start adding my patients that I have in my shelter. So for example, I can have Hobbs, which is a tiger. It's a Bengal tiger, and the owner is Kelvin. I have to create the partner Kelvin, of course, and I can save, and I have my first patient, Hobbs. It's a Bengal tiger. Okay, so I'm pretty satisfied with the application. I will then, as a developer, I can merge this into the staging branch, or I can just put this branch into staging. Here, it will start a new build by copying the production data and running it on the code that I just wrote, the additional code that I wrote.
Right.
So I will be able to install the shelter app inside this copy of the production database. This is usually the way you want to work, because sometimes there are some certain conflicts with the existing production database that could not be foreseen by the developer, and so it's best to first install it in a copy of the database before installing it
in the live database.
In the live database.
Okay.
Exactly. So I can connect to it and try to install it, but I won't go through all this again.
So now you'll be testing it as a user. This is not quite in the actual database yet. Okay.
No, so here as a developer, my first part is done. This needs to be tested by the end users,
right.
The project managers, if there are any, or just the end user who will test it.
Okay.
So he will go.
Okay.
He will go to his apps list. He will first need to enter developer mode, sadly, to update the apps list. You can find this type of documentation on Odoo.com documentation. Then I can find shelter application here. I can install it.
There we are. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a small application, it doesn't take long.
True.
I have my shelter application.
Perfect.
I can try again, make it, see if it works as expected. I do not have the demo data anymore, but everything works as expected. So what will I do? I will merge the staging branch into production. So here.
Okay, so now this is in our live database.
So now the live database is updating.
Okay.
It's updating.
It's updating, right?
Yeah. It shouldn't be very long because it has nothing to install. Because
true. It's fairly empty because we can add any information in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So it will be done. Yeah. Here we go. In a couple of seconds. So it's really all about minimizing the downtime, of course, every time we update the production database. And here I can go into it and again install the application.
Right. So it's the same process. I can have to go to debug mode to refresh.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Because the apps list is not updated automatically.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do it very quick. Yeah. For those who don't know, adding debug after web activates the developer mode.
Yeah.
But you can also, I'll show you how you can do it on a regular way.
Okay.
Regular way. You can just go to the settings and activate from there. Yeah.
Right.
So I should try to find Shelter app. I install it.
Okay.
And I'm ready to use it inside my production database.
Okay, so now your client basically has what they asked for. They asked for a custom module, and it's right now live in the database.
Exactly.
So I mean, just to have an idea, like all of this took less than half an hour. I mean, it's true. It's a demo database. It's a demo app, but just to show how quickly it can be done.
Indeed.
Okay. Yeah. Good. I mean, for those who can develop.
So
all right.
This way of working could be done before as well. As soon as the platform was released, this is how we intended people to work.
Right.
But you can now also use the online editor to make things, and you can also install apps from the App Store. So I have.
So those are the two big changes with the Odoo.sh in V12, is that you can also deploy any third-party apps, community apps directly from the App Store, and also use online editor.
Yeah. So let's go to apps.odoo.com or odoo.com/apps. It's the same website. And here I can try to find an interesting module that I would like to install in my database.
Okay.
So we are running on V12, so it's best to find an application that's running on V12 as well, that are made for V12. I don't really feel like paying, so I will take free applications, and I can browse a bit through the store if I want. Let's see here. I've actually already searched before.
Okay. So you have enough in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. This one seems nice. So it's about sending happy birthday wishes to your employees.
Okay.
So as you can see, there is a button deploy on Odoo.sh, which we will use. Here I can choose which project I want to deploy it in. Of course, I have a lot of projects, but this is the one I want to use for now. I will add this module. So right now it's actually creating a new branch on my repository with this custom module in it.
Okay.
As you can see, it's
so as before, development.
It's added here. I want to go straight to staging because I think it's a trustworthy application.
Okay.
And it should be.
I think which is also an important point to note, because most of the applications on the App Store are being rated. So with the ratings, you can see how trustworthy or not it is. So you can just move it up faster.
So if I go back to the app, you can see it has a 5-star rating. Well, only one rating, but it's
good enough.
Good enough
for something that's released less than a month ago. But
yeah, Odoo 12 has only been there for like
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks, and already there are. If I go on the apps, sorry, if I go back to the apps, I can see that for version 12 there are already 153 that are free. If I want all the ones, I can always see that there are 810.
Which is impressive, because this morning when we were looking at this, there were 149. So within 3 hours, we already had like 4 extra apps added, which is pretty impressive, I think. Yeah.
Indeed. So let's see. We have this branch where our birthday wish app is available. Let's see.
Right. Let's test it.
Okay. So again, to install it, you will have to update the app list first. I will show you that you can activate the developer mode from settings. So go to the apps and then update the apps list. Okay. So now I should find something with birthday.
I think it's the first one.
Oh, yeah, perfect. So I install it. It shouldn't be very big, because it looks like a small app. So if I go back to the description of the application, it can be useful to see how it works. So for employees, it just says go to employees, private information, add a birthday for the employee. So we'll do this.
So do we have, okay.
I'll create a second employee.
Okay.
let's say you can work at my company.
Yeah, I'm at a pet shelter.
And here you go. And then I will say that your birthday is today.
Yay! Happy birthday to me.
Okay. So now this, you need to know a bit of how it works to know this, but basically there is a scheduled action that runs every day to check if there are any birthdays. So we can run this
scheduler,
this action manually. And so if we run it, we can maybe see if a mail has been sent.
So this is in the test status. I don't receive it, you get it in the catch-all.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's all testing, so no mails are being sent from mail.
Right.
Yeah. And it's got here, and you can see that you should have received a mail wishing you a very happy birthday.
That's really nice. Thank you. It's not my birthday, but if it was, it would have been very nice.
I imagine. Yeah. So let's see. We can go on the employee and expect maybe the message to be logged here, but we can see it is not. So let's try to make it also log a message here.
Right.
And for this we will edit the code.
Okay, so now we'll be using the online editor to edit the code. Right. Okay.
So now let's click here. This the integration of the online editor is with Jupyter Lab. If people know about it, this is what we use to implement the online editor.
Okay.
So I can always create a new shell from here. So this is as we had before, but now I'm more interested in seeing the source of the birthday wish application. So I can see it has the standard structure, data models, static views. So the cron, the scheduled action, was actually calling this method, send birthday wish. And I can see that's how it works. For every employee, if the birthday is set, it checks if the day of the birthday matches today and the month of the birthday matches today's month. And then it takes the template, an email template, and sends the mail. So if you want to also log a message on the employee, we can just do employee.message post, and then the message we want, birthday message sent. This way, whenever we will send a birthday message, we will also post something on the employee. So let's save this, and this is brand new. The fact that we change the code here will live restart the server and make it so that the updates, the changes in the code are reflected directly.
Okay.
So I go back to.
So you don't have to do the you don't have to do the debug mode, right?
Yeah, no, you don't have to. To make a new commit, make a new build where the code is updated.
Okay.
And it's really all about avoiding the additional time that you would have.
Okay, so it's directly updated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will run the birthday with notification. Okay. It has run. I can maybe see. Yeah, I have a second mail. And now let's see if I also
have it in employee.
Sorry, not the contacts, employees.
Oh.
And I can see the birthday message has been sent.
Right, that's pretty cool.
So this is what I want. So now to make these changes permanent, you will of course need to commit them and push them. This can be done from the online editor as well, as this is a GitHub repository. Oops, sorry, I need to move to the source folder, of course, and here I can see there are a couple of new files. There are some Python caches that are linked to Python that I can ignore, but I basically want to add the changes that I made. So I will add this file, and then I will commit them. Add the message. Okay. And now I will have to push these changes to my to the repository, of course. To do this, I will see what the remotes are. So I can either use SSL authentication or HTTPS. I will be using HTTPS, so I will push towards HTTPS. The remote names HTTPS, and I will push my head to what was the branch named? April birthday wish. Here we go. Now it prompts me to give my username and password. I use two-factor authentication, so I cannot use a password. I need to use a token, which I will use here, and then delete the right items. So I used the thing, and it pushed, and you should see straight away here.
Okay.
A new commit has been pushed.
Okay.
Now I can delete this token. So now we will see that if I connect to this database, it will straight away log a message whenever I send a birthday wish.
Right. Okay.
And if I want to deploy this into my production database, I can just merge this feature again.
Okay. And do we have to wait for it to be connected in?
You don't have to wait for the build, but it's best to wait for it so you can
test it.
So you can test it first, of course.
Okay.
But here, I know what I'm doing.
Right. Of course.
So. And I merge it into the production, which of course will update it.
Okay. Great.
So all this is actually quite new. The fact that you can change the code and see the changes live. And this, sadly, it's not applied for the production branch because this would be too risky.
Right.
But it's only applied for the staging and development branches where you can edit the code. For the production branch, you could not edit the code.
Yeah.
You could not make changes here and save them. Also interesting to note is that you can also add a debugger. For example, for people that like to debug using PDB, they can put a trace right here, and then they can start a separate server using Odoo shell. And this is a shell. This for developers it should be familiar. And then you can call this method manually. And then, as you can see, I am now in my debugger, and I can explore all the variable environments. If something that I do not understand by just writing the code, I can really get into it and see what every variable is worth at that moment. I can see employee name, etc. Everything from here. Okay. There's also interesting to note that you can now start a shell directly using the Odoo shell. This is brand new. It's basically, I thought, consoling. Okay, so here I have also an interactive shell, which works the same way as the previous shell that I showed, but it has an advantage that it can use the pretty class. So for example, if I want to read the names of all the the users that exist here, I can list them here, but I can also have them printed prettily like this. And if I have more, of course, this view becomes interesting to have a more detailed structure to analyze data. Okay. So this is it for the more technical aspects, the developments
right,
that you can do with the online editor.
So if you go back to our agenda, basically we've covered the introduction, a functional flow, and the development flow. I think Dennis has answered more or less any questions, but we'll still give around 2 to 3 minutes for questions if you have any. Voila. And then I think we'll wrap it up. I think it's true that from definitely a non-developer perspective, I find this year's Odoo.sh a lot more user-friendly and a lot more flexible.
We're trying to evolve in that way.
Okay. And where is it going? What's the future?
The future? Well, there are a couple of features that we want to add. I'm not sure I can communicate them all because we're not.
It's top secret. Okay, so I guess you just have to say, subscribe to our channel and webinar to make sure that you are aware of all the features that are coming up. Yeah. Is there one small thing you could review?
Yeah. We would like to support HTTP 2.0.
Okay.
It's for developers. It's it's what. For now we only support HTTP 1. But,
okay.
In the future we'll support HTTP 2.
Okay. So I can see there's a bit of reticence on your side, but for those of you who would like to know please go ahead.
Sure. We have also promoted the fact that we will grant SSH access to your container, and we aimed to release this at Odoo Experience, but sadly we could not make it. So it will be released in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so that's the next big thing that'll be happening. Yeah. Okay. And so you will be able to connect to your instance from your home. Anywhere, using your own credentials. That's it. Okay. That you have set up for your GitHub account. Okay. Super.
I don't think we have any other questions that are left. Dennis, I think he's on the last couple of questions that are there. Well, anyway, I think it's time to wrap it up. We've been at this for almost an hour. Thank you so much, Dennis. That was very interesting and a very inclusive look at what Odoo.sh is and the different features. And thank you for taking the time to do this. I know it's not part of your job normally. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to email Dennis at dve@odoo.com.
Yes. But more specifically, if you have feedback on the platform, if you would like to see new features, you can always actually go to.
Let me show your page so it's easier.
Inside your project, you can see that below your user, you have a link to the documentation, which I should also mention, of course, because it is very complete and has a lot of things that we went over through today are resumed here. For example, the branches, the stages are explained here. You can also have the settings page. Each item is listed and explained here. So if you have questions, go consult the documentation, and we also have a small FAQ. Frequently asked questions.
That's nice to know. Okay.
Where each question is answered here by category for different profiles. And if you have feedback to send, for example, you would like some new feature that you believe would benefit all the users on Odoo.sh, then you can send feedback, and this.
Okay, it sends it directly to you.
Exactly.
Okay.
It sends us directly to our team.
Okay. Great. Super. Now that we've covered everything, thank you again, and thank you to everyone who's been watching. To keep on. You can subscribe to our channel to keep seeing other webinars that we'll be starting the series from today, and we'll have it every Thursday at 3 p.m. and we'll also have new webinars coming up, especially for partners and also for, I don't know if I can say this, for different types of users. Please subscribe to our channel if you'd like this, and feel free to keep comments or like the video and share it on your social media if you would like to spread the good word of Odoo and Odoo.sh. Thanks everyone, and I hope to see you next Thursday. Goodbye.
Bye bye.